Okay, hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. So apologize for the this change in format, but looking at the weather, it looked pretty questionable. We were talking amongst the crew here amongst ourselves, and it looks like it's kind of sketchy in some of the outlying areas. I hope you're staying warm and safe here today, and thank you for being here. I don't have any really large I'm sorry, number of announcements today, other than the usual. Make sure you rename yourself to a first and last name that's recognizable. I'm real pleased to have our speaker here today, Angela. She's going to speak into us. But before I do that, I'm going to hand the reins over to, let me see, I think it's going to be going to Linda right there, and she's
Yes.
going to take over. Thank you, Linda.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our February meeting. I have two very brief announcements, but they are very important. The first is from Harvest Share. Um, the weather is not looking great for Harvest Share's Seed Share and Food Gardening event on Saturday. Whether you are volunteering or have registered to attend, please note that the program will be held unless county facilities are closed and all events in these buildings are canceled. And Kat will she'll send an email out as well if the events need to be canceled. So just a heads up for Saturday afternoon and the Harvest Share Seed Share event. And second announcement is Wild Ones, Saturday, February 8th. That's this Saturday at 10 a.m. The Wild Ones National Capital Region will have a presentation on native orchids by the expert on orchids, Carol Allen from the University of Maryland. This presentation will be given at the Glenstone Environmental Center. There is no fee and no registration is needed. Glenstone is located as 12180 Glen Road, and I'll put this in the chat in a few minutes. Tell the person at the gate you're here to attend the Wild Ones presentation. The center may not be heated. It's a kind of a all season building. So dress accordingly. This presentation has been approved for one CEU. Okay. And I'm thinking right now, Saturday morning looks like it may happen because the weather's supposed to turn bad toward the afternoon. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Allison for an update on the seed.
Thank you, Linda, and hello, everyone. I just wanted to make a few comments about the newsletter. As many of you realize, we have a new format now, a new sending method, and I want to make sure that you realize that this came about a week ago. We had 447 newsletters attempted deliveries. There was one bounce back. I'm not sure why. That sometimes happens as a temporary result because your email provider is down, or it could be you have a bad email address in VMS. There was a 77% open rate for this newsletter, which means almost a quarter of them didn't get opened. So if you did not see your newsletter, check your spam folder to see if it might be there. Or if you have an old email address in VMS, that's where it would have gone. So do make sure your VMS record is up to date. One other thing I wanted to mention about this is, these read more buttons will take you to another location where the full articles can be viewed and printed. If you need to, you can use your browser print function to print it off if you want to do that, or save it as PDF. Just to get everybody oriented towards what's happening with the newsletter. If you have any questions, be happy to take those either now or offline.
Okay, well, I think we'll get going. And if anybody has a question about the seed, they could drop it in the chat and Allison can help you out there. Okay, I'm gonna go to sharing my screen and share our recognitions for today. There we go. Okay, so our Master Gardener recognitions are going to be our committee chairs. We've had a good number of people adding on, and for some of our interns, they may not know who some of the people are that they would contact if they were interested in a particular committee. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So for plant clinics, it's Ann Claxton and Jeanette Diamore. For urban gardening here in the middle, it's Ann Claxton and Lana Shea. And for community tables, when we get requests to go and talk somewhere, that would be Ken Ross. And community tables for, hang on one second, gotta get rid of that. Oh, yeah. Community chairs for hands-on education. For Baywise, it's Ann Claxton and myself, Linda Barrett. For therapeutic horticulture, Lisa Diamond and Wendy Band. For food rescue and gleaning, Kat Kahn and Robin Kugelnick. And for the youth garden, Emma Brennan is back, and we are adding Mary Jo Johnson and Kara Singh as co-chairs. And committee chairs for gardens, for Nature Forward, Janet Owens and Joy Adler. For the fairgrounds, it's Pam Bates. For the Bell Dawson House, it is Betty Chichi. And for the Durwood Demo Gardens, it is Mary Jo Egan and Wendy Thomas. Wendy is new to that job as a co-chair. And continuing with the gardens, Sandy Sinapani is at the National Library of Medicine Garden, and the USO Garden is Michaela Barnes and Yumiko Mara. And our committee chairs for major events. Thank you to you all for taking on big things. Close Encounters with Agriculture is Gail Green and Mark Traversa. Our Speakers Bureau currently has no committee chair. We're working on that. Harvest Festival, Mike Welsh and Taffy Turner. Garden Discovery Day, we have 2 new people, Blair Zucker and Jeanette Diamore. And our spring conference currently has no chair. Communications, you just met Allison. Allison Edwards is our new chair of the SEED. Social events, Carol Kosery and Linda Barrett, myself. And public relations, Leanne Galletley and Hillary Longo. Hillary's new to that. And task force. Sometimes we have ongoing things that just need a job done. So these are the folks. So Chuck Delaney is in charge of the tech team. For the fall conference, Marie Rojas is taking over. So thank you, Marie. Social media is Bev Carriger. Garden educators, Carol Kosery and Pam Hosmer. And our webmasters, yay, Renu Murick and Willie Bonilla. VMS is Katie Mackay. And then our Mission in Motion group, Renew Murick and Mandy Gordon and Alan Perper. So those are all of our different groups. And if there's something that, appeals to you, you could go to them for some information. All right, we're going to honor one of our own today and recognize Pat Kenny. I call her the Herb Queen. It's a little thing I do. She's from the class of 1997, so I think that works out to 28 years. And she's always had a love for herbs. If you ever go to her house, just amazing. The number and variety of herbs from all over the world. Just is entrenched with loving herbs. She's volunteered with many different Master Gardener activities, and she loves volunteering with the Speakers Bureau and talking to the public. And I know that we all saw the email about going to her talk. I don't know, it was a few weeks ago, and I couldn't go that day. And I thought, oh, I didn't get to see Pat. Well, Pat's going to keep talking through 2025. And then she might decide that she's gonna stop. But so we have a few more months to see this wonderful woman speak. But some other things that she does that I didn't even realize until recently. There's cards that get passed around at in-person meetings for us to sign to thank speakers. Well, that's Pat. She does that for each and every speaker. So she does a lot of little things that may not get noticed, but just wanted to recognize her for the super things that she does. Okay, that ends our show. And Dave, I'm going to let you take it and introduce our guest.
Okay, thanks, Linda. And hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. Angela Science is an entomology PhD candidate at our favorite university, the University of Maryland. Her research focuses on the biocontrol of that little dastardly bug, the emerald ash borer, an invasive forest pest that's attacking ash trees throughout the East Coast. She's passionate about plant-insect interactions, forestry ecology, agroecology, and biological control of pests. And so with that, Angela, you are on.
Thank you very much for introducing me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm really excited that I got to share a little bit of what I'm doing and all the things that I'm working with. Yeah, so I just wanted to then just clarify, I am working with a very specific forest pest, which is the emerald ash borer. So that's like my expertise goes in that pest in particular. But I believe that there are so many invasive forest pests that are affecting our country, and we really have different ways of working it. And yeah, so I'm just going to be giving you some information about it and provide some details of it. So let me just hide these floating controls so that, okay. Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about the invasive forest pest in Maryland, a little bit about management and the current status. And then again, I am really, really excited to be here. Just move these things. Okay. So first of all, I just wanted to give you a little bit of details about forests in the US. So forests cover up to 32.3% of all of the US land, which is a big chunk of land. And invasive species have been rampant since the 1800s, and they have been just going through all of the country and affecting the forests around it. So between 1960 and 2017, we have seen a loss of $1.26 trillion only over invasive species. And those annual costs have increased from 2 billion in the 60s to over 26 billion in recent decades, which it's a good chunk. So management of invasive forest pests is currently costing about 1.7 billion a year. And when you consider the loss in residential property values, it goes up to $830 million. So considering that Maryland, and this is a Master Gardeners for Maryland, we have 41% of our land covered in forests. So we have a big threat coming up from these invasive species. And so that's why this is a very important topic to learn about and know a little bit about what we can find around, because it is in our state, it is in our counties, it is all over the place. And so there are different things that we could do to help prevent the spread. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about it. So these are the main invasive forest and urban forest pests that are found in Maryland, and specifically in Montgomery County. So the spongy moth, which you have previously known probably as the gypsy moth, the spotted lanternfly, hemlock woolly adelgid, the eastern tent caterpillar, which is not an invasive forest pest, but it is a pest that you might find in some of your trees or some of your shrubs in your gardens or in your spaces. And then the emerald ash borer, which is the beetle that I'm currently working on, and I will be providing some information about my own research and some of my findings. So let's go ahead and start with the spongy moth. Previously known as the gypsy moth. This is the scientific name of this moth is Lymantria despair, and it is a moth that has colorations ranging from brown to whitish, depending if it's the female or if it's the male. And then the caterpillar is this one that you can see on the picture. So this species is native from Europe, and curiously enough, it was introduced in 1868 by Leopold Trouvelot, who was a scientist who brought moths from France to Massachusetts with the intention to breed these different types of silk-producing caterpillars. Unfortunately, this ended up not being a very good silk-producing caterpillar, and so they decided not to continue. However, some of these moths escaped their labs and managed to establish in the eastern coast. Because it has been for so long, it is considered the best studied biological invasion in the world. And there is a big program from the USDA called the USDA National Spongy Moth Management Strategy with the National Slow the Spread Program, that it's dealing specifically with spongy moth and trying to control it for as much as possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the biology. They go through four life stages. So they go through eggs, then larvae, which is also called a caterpillar. They pupate, and then they go as adult, as any other moth. Their populations go through cycle. And so you might see that one year they're like really, really problematic and you're seeing them all over the place. And then maybe another year you don't see them as much. They lay a big chunk of eggs, so each egg mass can have up to 1,000 eggs, and then you tend to see them like the picture on the top right, where it's like a woolly, like kind of blotchy mass that it's on different type of surfaces such as trees. They have one generation per year, and they're night feeders, so you don't usually see the caterpillars throughout the day. This is one of the mechanisms that they have to avoid being attacked by birds and other type of animals. And because this is an invasive pest, like it is not native from this area, there's very few natural enemies that actually control it. So right now in the winter time and like coming up in the spring, you will be able to see mostly the egg masses. And then coming up in the spring, you might see some of the larvae as they start to hatch. Now, some of the symptoms and how you may find them throughout either your areas, your gardens, around the forest near your spaces. This is a tree defoliator. So what the larvae does is that it excavates small holes in leaves first, and then it just goes ahead and start munching on the leaf in the margins, and it can just go ahead and feed on all the leaf as it grows. So when we have like really high outbreaks, and maybe you have seen this out in the field, you may see that frass, which is the fancy way that we call insect poop, falling from the foliated trees. So it's like almost as if you're having like a very misty rain that you don't really know what it is. Well, it might be poop. Severe defoliation can cause mortality, and different or like multiple seasons of it can cause mortality. So more than 4 years of full defoliation can definitely kill trees. Now, one of the big problems about it is that they can feed on more than 300 trees and shrubs. And so they like eating oaks, poplars, birch, apples, sweet gum, basswoods, hawthorn, willows. There's all over the place. And so as you can see on the map, this species is already quarantined in 20 states. And all of these spaces, or like all of these counties that are marked in red, are counties that are currently have the spongy moth. So they're all over the place and they're really problematic. So let's see what are some of the ways that management goes. So most of these control methods are performed by Maryland Department of Ag. And so you might see them, especially like in the spring, that they're doing aerial applications of microbial biopesticides. So maybe some of you have already heard about Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT. There is a variety in specific that attacks or that is targeted for moths and butterflies. This is the one that is the most effective and is mostly used in Maryland. They apply it early in the season when the small caterpillars are out there, and they will only spray on the forest areas where they have monitored and found these species. There's also another fungal disease that is already present, and it is in the nature, Entomophaga maimaega. It is effective natural control in mostly cool and wet springs, so it cycles with weather. So maybe if we had a very wet season, we will see that the spongy moth is not going to be very prevalent. But on very drought or very dry years, we might see a spike in this in the attack of these species. Another way that has been used, or that is currently being used in Maryland, is mating disruption. So what this do is that there is a use of chemical pheromones that mimic the other like the females of the moth, and it disrupts the communication between them. So what they do is that they put these traps and they put these pheromones early to mid-June, so that when all of the adults are coming out, they just can't really find each other, and so they can't really mate. So what if you have them in your garden? What if you have them in a space where you are growing or where you see them? If you're going to be targeting any of these, try to only target small caterpillars. And so here's an example for Wisconsin on how you manage the timing. So if it is early in the season, you want to see if you can find any of the egg masses, you want to remove them. If like a little bit later in the season, in the spring, if you see any small caterpillars and you want to try to control it, you can find some of these biopesticides on some of the stores nearby, as long as it is a biopesticide that it's not causing a lot of problems. You can target control them using this spraying. You can also use sticky cards or any other type of things that can help control these things. Now we're gonna go through spotted lanternfly, which is very popular in the past few years, because just as we have seen them in campus, they're all over the place. Their scientific name is Licorma deliculata, and in my opinion, they're really pretty. They have a lot of pretty colors. However, they're slowly becoming a problem. So these are native to Eastern Asia, and it was first detected in Pennsylvania in 2014. So we've only had them for about 10 years, but it is already present in 18 states. And if you see the map on the left, the potential distribution of this lanternfly is pretty wide. So we want to make sure that we control it. We want to make sure that we are monitoring and trying to keep it in control as much as possible. And as you can see on the map on the right, they are present pretty much all over Maryland. Some of the areas on the bottom of the map are not, like, we have not found them yet, but definitely Montgomery is up there with infested, and then a little bit northward we already have highly infested. So you can keep an eye on this one. Now this is a plant hopper. So what it does is that it has like a straw-like mandible, or like mouth part, where they suck the sap from trunks and stems. So female lay masses in different types of structures, which is one of the reasons why this lanternfly has become such a big problem, because they can lay their egg masses in cars, in poles, in trees, like all over the place. And it is very easy to just transport these masses, these egg masses, from one place to another. They resemble clumps of moths, and some of these egg masses can go from 30 to 50 eggs per mass. And so this is a problem because we might be moving this lanternfly from one county to another, from one state to another, if we're not paying attention. So when you see them in a tree, they tend to gather in large numbers when they're feeding. And as you can see on this little image on the bottom, between January and March, so mostly on the winter, you will find the egg masses. And then in the spring, you will start to see the juveniles, like with different types of colorations. In the summer, you'll start to see the red ones, which are about to become adults. And then later in the season, in the summer, and then in the fall, you will see adults that are starting to lay eggs. And that's the way that they will overwinter. So they will stay in as an egg mass throughout the winter. Now, you may see them, like you would actually see the insect all around, but you can also find some of their symptoms. So as they feed, they excrete a sticky, sugary fluid called honeydew, which can produce a rotten odor as it ferments. So a lot of the times you will see like this smelly and like mold that could be growing called sooty mold that is just feeding on all the sugars that are coming out from it. This can cover the leaves, inhibiting photosynthesis. And contrary to what a lot of people might think, the spotted lanternfly is not typically associated with host mortality unless you're a highly infested tree of heaven, which is their main host, and for several seasons. But they're a nuisance. They're all around, and they will be excreting this sugar content or this sugar fluid, but they're not really killing the trees. Just to clarify, how is it that this honeydew is produced is since this is an insect that it's just pretty much tapping into the sap, they cannot really take up all of the liquid that it's coming out from it. So then they take on whatever nutrients they need from the sap, and then they expel whatever they are not able to process. That's why honeydew is produced by these types of insects. Now, their main host, as I mentioned before, tree of heaven. This is the one that you really will be seeing them reproducing and present. But they're also attacking grape, black walnut, red and silver maple, weeping and black willow, and more than 70 plant species. So I don't know if you've been able to see them in the levels and in the amounts as you've seen them in these pictures, but I definitely have. Like I've been biking through a C&O canal and I see all of these trees that are completely packed. So as you can see, these could be a problem for the yields of some of the fruit trees. And that's why we're really trying to control this, because even though it's not exactly killing the host, they are still affecting the tree. So now some of the management and control methods that they've been using here in Maryland and in other areas is the squishing or crushing by hand or using the traps to kill the adults. You can scrape or crush the egg masses. However, just have in consideration that 98% of them are above reach. So even if you're crushing a bunch of them, just having consideration that if you do not see a lot of changes, like you're like, I spent my whole summer just crushing all of these. What happened? Well, maybe a lot of them, you just did not saw them. We do have this system that was set up by Maryland Department of Ag for reporting so that we can keep an eye on where is it that these spotted lanternflies are throughout the whole state. So if you just scan the QR code that it's on the upper right screen, you will be able to submit a report where if you take a picture of the insect, you say where it was, when was the time that it was, and provide a little bit of information. And this is very, very important for people so that they can, for like decision making of what to do. So the cultural control is just the removal of tree of heaven. So in areas where there is like high incidence of these, they're just deciding to just remove it altogether so that the reproduction does not come up as high. And then chemical control, which is not the most recommended because we do not have any insecticide that is specific for spotted lanternfly that has been approved for this. However, if you're going to be doing any of it, you can use a contact insecticide directly at the pest so that you're not affecting any other species. And then if you're going to be, or if you decide to hire a professional applicator, you can use systemic insecticide, which is strongly advised to only apply on tree of heaven, which is like really, really highly infested, because you don't really want to attack any of the other beneficials or any of the other insects that could be around that are not really affecting the tree. You do not want to kill any of the pollinators or any of the other species. So chemical control, only if you have a really, really big problem and very specific to the pest itself. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the eastern tent caterpillar, Malacosoma americanum. This is a Maryland, or this is present in Maryland, and this is present in the eastern coast already. But it is very common to see, and I just wanted to introduce it and talk a little bit about it. So, as I mentioned, it is found all over the eastern United States and southern Canada. Their adults are actually really pretty. They're kind of fussy and cute. They're gregarious. This means that they tend to gather in a bunch. And then they have one generation per year here in Maryland. They create the silk webs to protect themselves in the fort of tree branches. So they usually you will see them in where the branches are like just where they're connecting to each other. And as the other caterpillar that we saw before, they're nocturnal leaf feeders. So they will stay in this silky web during the day, and they will come out at night. Most of the damage you will see in May. So if you are trying to find them or trying to control them, you want to go out during this time. If you are having any problems in the like right now, you will be finding them mostly as eggs. So this is how they will be spreading out throughout the year. And then the type of symptoms or the types of damage that you will see is defoliation of a few branches. This is an early season caterpillar, so they will go ahead and start feeding on the trees. However, the trees will continue to grow. They will probably be able to grow new foliage, and these generally do not die due to an infestation. However, you might see that they're still feeding on your trees or on your shrubs or anything like that nearby, and you might be interested in controlling them. So what you can do, well, before we do that, some of the hosts of these caterpillars are ornamental cherries, wild cherries, crab apples, and then other plants of the rose families. Sometimes they can be seen on pecan, hawthorn, beech, and willow, but as I mentioned before, they don't really kill the trees. The impact is primarily aesthetic. You just see these types of webs on these branches. So if you're having a problem and if you do not want to see them around, some of the preventive measures are destroying the tents with a stick or a pole just by pruning the egg masses. So you might be able to see like this round shaped egg masses that are like blackish. And what you do is just prune that branch so that the caterpillars are not able to emerge out and you will not have this problem. There is a bunch of different biological control agents that are already present because this is a pest that it's already present in this area. And so birds are very good at them. There's natural predators like ground beetles, stink bugs, or other wasps that are attacking their caterpillar and then feeding on it throughout the process of it. And then, as we talked before, Bacillus thuringiensis of the variety Kurstaki, BT, is also very useful to control any type of caterpillar. They only work on small caterpillars, so if you're going to be using this biopesticide, you want to do it early in the season. Damage usually only kill or like it will only affect recently planted or very stressed trees. So it's not going to be like a big problem during most of the season. But then again, if you're seeing that they're like eating all your plants, eating all your shrubs, your trees around, you can always just try to destroy the tent with a stick. And that will be pretty much it, because they will not have anywhere to go to protect themselves. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about the hemlock woolly adelgid, which it has been a big problem for a while. The scientific name of this one is Adelgis sugi, and they start like really, really small creatures, just like the ones that you're seeing from A, B, C. So the A are the juveniles. They cover themselves in this woolly substance so that they can protect themselves. And then they will just go into an instar where they're just completely immobilized, where they will be feeding on hemlock. And then you might see some of the adults which have wings, and they will be flying from one place to another. So these are native to Asia. It is expected that they came from Japan. And the first report on the East Coast was in Richmond, Virginia in 1951. And it slowly started to spread out, as you can see on the map. It was already present in Maryland by 1980s. And so there is currently a plan that has been in place for a while already, that it is the development of the hemlock woolly adelgid management and suppression plan. And the whole idea of this plan was to investigate different treatment options and different ways that we can control these pests. So as you can see in the map, it is present in several of the areas. It is definitely present in Maryland. However, there are some areas, especially in the north and Canada, where they're not fully established, but it is some of the range where they could be present. So just the same as some of the other insects, these are sap suckers. So they use their needle-like mouth parts to feed. So they will just go ahead and establish where they are, and they will not be moving around a lot. All of the populations are female, and they tend to reproduce asexually. So there's no need for a male for them to be able to go ahead and reproduce, to be able to continue their generations. They tend to have 2 generations per year. So as you can see in the graph underneath, they're not really developing in the summer. In the summer, they're just like feeding and staying there. However, in the autumn and in the winter, that is when they're going to start growing. So they go through 4 different immature stages, and then they come out as adults. More of these wingless female will lay eggs, and the life cycle will go ahead and continue. The egg masses are present during the spring and the fall, and these females can lay up to 300 eggs, which then again, it is a lot, and they're definitely reproducing, and they're going all over the place. So some of the symptoms that you can see is, well, the presence of the white woolly wax on the twigs. Some of the damage that you can see that is caused by this pest is fading or thinning of dying of limbs near the base of the tree, because they tend to go from the bottom, from the base of the tree, and then they start going upwards. So you will see branches that have been losing some of the needles and just like thinning of it. While they're feeding, they might include the injection of toxic saliva, which is the reason why some of these needles will start to get yellowish. And so you will see needle drop, which is the desiccation of these needles on twigs and the buds. With heavy infestations, you can see tree mortality in more than 4 consecutive years of these, or if there's a lot of stress in the environment, either by drought, or if there's been like a particular wet year and they're like really going through all of these needles over and over again, that's when the tree will start to die. However, they're just there, slowly spreading and slowly building up their populations. Now, they pretty much only feed on hemlock. So here in the East Coast and Maryland, you will find them on Eastern and Carolina hemlock. They don't have any other alternative hosts so far that we know. However, half of the range of the hemlock in the east is now infested, and its entire range is at risk. So as we saw before on the map, like there is a big range of these trees, and this is a pest that is definitely attacking. So considering that we have 42,000 acres of hemlock forest in Maryland, this is a big problem, and this is something that the folks from the Forest Service and Maryland Department of Ag in the forest department or the forestry department are certainly trying to work really hard to control it. So some of the management and control, it is very, very important to be monitoring because the early detection is extremely important. So finding any signs of damage or the woolly walks on your hemlock is what it's going to tell us if it is present or not. There are some resistant varieties, and there's been some research in trying to reproduce this. There's a hybrid called Traveler hemlock, which might not be commercially available for this area, but you could be checking on your local nurseries and trying to see if it is approved for sale or if it is being provided or being sold in this areas. But there is some of the research being done into trying to find these varieties. Now, there's also different ways of trying to control it. There is pesticide control. You can spray horticultural oils between November and March, which is the time where they are not mobile, and you can go ahead and like try to remove, like the oil will go ahead and make an effort into removing the woolly thing. And then with insecticidal soap between July and August, you can go ahead and try to kill the trees. Some of the if you have a really, really bad problem, you can also contact a professional, and there's ways of applying insecticide, such as soil drenching or tree injection using imidacloprid, but this is only done with professionals. And then there's a lot of effort into trying to control this. So there's been a USDA program that went ahead and found in Japan, which is one of the natural enemies that it's killing this pest. And so there's this predatory beetle, Laricobius sp, and it was introduced from Japan and lays eggs inside the egg clusters of these adelgid. So they're really good. They're really specific for this one. And this is already a USDA program that it is being used to try to control it. So it's already out there. People are trying to have this beetle attack specifically these egg clusters, and trying to find ways of controlling it, because then again, this is an invasive pest and we do not want it to get out of control. And then, well, my favorite beetle, because that's the one that I'm working with, we're gonna start talking about the emerald ash borer. So this beetle scientific name is Agrillus planipennis, and what they do is that they create galleries. So you might be out in the forest or in the swamp, and you will find stands of trees that are completely dead, that they do not have any branches. This is a very problematic pest. So it is native of Eastern Asia, and it was first detected more than 20 years ago in Michigan, and it has slowly spread throughout all of the Eastern Shore, and we've already found them on the West Coast. So this is a big problem that we're trying to control as much as we can. As you see in the map, all of the green areas are the ash distribution, or the approximate range of ash. So these are all the areas where this tree could be found. And all of those red dots are places where we've already found county detections of these beetle. So as you can see, they're pretty widespread, and unfortunately, there is a lot of them to feed from. So what they do is that they feed on the cambium tissue under the bark of trees. So the cambium tissue is the area where all the phloem is going between the crown, where all of the photosynthetic substances are being made. So all the sugar that the leaves are making, that goes all the way down to the root system, And then the root system, which is the one that takes all of the nutrients, all of the minerals, and all of the water and shoots them up to the crown, is interrupted by these larvae. So what it does is that it creates these serpentine-like galleries as they're feeding. So if you remove the bark of an ash tree, you will see that if there is damage from it, you will see these type of galleries. The problem with this is that since it is interrupting this flow, it's kind of girdling the tree. So within 2 to 5 years, it has the capacity of killing entirely the tree, which is why it's such a big deal. It's such a big problem, and we are losing millions of trees to this pest. So I'm going to show you some of the symptoms that you can find on your ash to be able to tell if it has been attacked by this or not. You will see crown dieback. So some of the areas of your crown will be completely dead, but some of them might still be there. The reason why this happened is that the beetle will be feeding on a specific sites, right? But maybe the other side of the trees has not been feed on. So you might not have the conductivity of the liquid, like the sugars going down or the water coming up on only one side of the tree. And then as it continues to spread and as it continues to reproduce, it will start to kill the whole tree. You might find epicormix, which is the shoots that are coming out from the base of the tree. And this happens for the same reason of the girdling. So the root is like, hey, I have all of these water, I have all of these root system that I need to maintain, that I need to keep up, and I'm not able to get any of the sugars. So the tree starts to shoot up a bunch of flushing of leaves in the bottom of the tree, which is not really where it should be. It should be all the way in the crown, but this is just a way for the tree to try to survive. You might see woodpeck damage. Woodpeckers really like the emerald ash borer. So you might see them like shaving off it, or you might actually see the damage that just looks like a woodpecker. You see bark splits for the same reason of the conductivity between the flow of liquid inside the tree. It's like the bark just cannot hold it anymore, and then it splits. And sometimes you can see underneath those bark splits the galleries. And then, well, you see the signs of the actual beetle when they come out. Since this is a beetle that has like a D-shaped head, what they do is that they just like feed, and they will start to bore into the wood when they emerge. So you will see this D-shaped exit holes on these trees. And well, the accumulation of all of these symptoms will let you know that it is in here. Now, the main host of this beetle, as I mentioned before, is American ash. So all of the species of Fraxinus. In Maryland, we have green, white, pumpkin, and in lower levels, black. There's some Carolina ash in the eastern shore in the southern areas. However, there have also been found attacking white fringe trees and other trees from the Eliaceae family. So if you go in any swamp on this area, you will see that there's a bunch of dead stands of trees, and that has been caused by the emerald ash borer. And so it's a big problem. This picture over here is from the eastern shore at Tuckahoe State Park. And the swamps, it's really sad because the swamps are just completely full of these dead trees. And it has become so problematic that even in my lab, where we work with the emerald ash borer, we have to go 2 or 3 hours away from College Park to be able to find any tree of ash, because they've just been killing them all and there's not enough of them for us to do research on. So there's a lot of effort that has been put into trying to control this beetle. You might have seen on some of the state parks or national parks where they have like these signs of firewood alert, do not move it, trying to find if it has been located. Like the big thing about transporting firewood is that they will be there and you might be moving them from one place to another. So that's why people recommended to only buy wherever you're going to be burning it. Some of the cultural control is the removal of infested trees, and then avoid moving the ash wood. One thing that it's very important to have in consideration about the ash trees is that this is a very stress tolerant tree. So that's the reason why it had been used mostly in the 60s and the 70s as an urban tree. So all of a sudden you had 80,000 trees all over the place in Baltimore. And with the coming of this beetle, we had to remove these trees. And so it became a very problematic pest that cost a lot of money just in the removal of them because it will die, and which is the big problem with it. Chemical control can also be done. It is very expensive and only certified professionals can do it. However, you could do trunk or soil injection of insecticide, soil drench, or bark sprays to try to control them. Fortunately, there is a handful of biological control agents that can help us control it. There was a big effort going into their native range and finding whatever natural enemies are attacking these beetles in China, Japan, Korea, Russia, all these areas, and then introducing them. So these three wasps that you see on the right, Tetracycus planipenisi and Spacius galeni and Obius agrilae, the first two are natural enemies that attack the larvae of the beetle. So they're parasitoids. That means that they will leg the eggs inside of the larvae, and the larvae of the wasps will be feeding on the inside of it. And then Obius agrilae is a wasp that does the same thing, but with the eggs. So it is like a more of a preventive type of control. There are some number of native natural enemies that attack this type of beetle. However, they are not enough, and they're not really doing enough to kill all the trees, to kill all the beetles. That's why USDA decided to introduce some of these natural enemies. As I mentioned before, woodpeckers are really, really good at them. I guess the AB is really yummy. The problem with woodpeckers is that they will go ahead and attack the larvae, but they will only find them if the tree is highly, highly infested. So it might be a little too late for the actual control of the beetle, and the tree might already be far too close to death to actually be able to control them. And then there are some fungal and bacterial diseases. Some of the species are a little bit more resistant than other, but there's like a whole bunch of different things that we're trying to find or we're trying to do to control these bees. Now, coming into a little bit of my own research. So I was trying to figure out how is it working with their synchrony. So as you can see on the right, we have the life cycle of a beetle, right? So the adult lays the eggs, then the eggs become larvae, small larvae starts to grow, it continues growing. It becomes a JL, or like a larvae that it's like a pre-pupae, and that's the stage where they overwinter. So they will stay inside of the tree as this pre-pupae, and then early in the spring, they start to pupate and come out as adults. However, when you're working with a wasp that it's a natural enemy, you have to have in consideration the nature of this wasp, right? The biology of this wasp. So if you're an egg parasitoid and you only attack eggs, this wasp needs to be present while the eggs are out there. If you are a larval parasitoid, the wasp needs to be present at the stage where the larvae is susceptible for it. And so some of my initial research found that some of the wasps were flying at different times and we were not really expecting them to be flying because maybe there was not the same time as the larvae was supposed to be out there. And so this kind of sparkled the questions of like, I wonder what is going on in here. Let's figure out. And so my research just basically focused on going out to the field, cutting down trees throughout the whole season, and then trying to figure out what was the timing of this beetle and seeing when was it that it was coming out. And then putting up different types of traps to figure out when was it that these wasps were attacking it. And so on the two pictures that you see over there, that is how you find them. These are larvae and cocoons of these wasps. And so I did my research in the highlands in Western Maryland and in the lowlands, and I was able to find that some of these are not exactly synchronized depending on where you're finding them. So I was able to see that in the highlands, we are having a 2-year life cycle. That means that the adults take 2 years, or like the larvae takes 2 years to develop. And then in the lowlands, it takes 1 year. So while we have 2 years life cycles in the highlands, in higher elevation, there's a lot more larvae that are susceptible for the wasps. So in the highlands, the wasps are present during the time that a lot of the food is available. So in the highlands, we're having a very good, or like a far better quality of control than what we see in the lowlands. So in the lowlands, we're starting to see that we are only available, or the susceptible larvae is only available at the end of the summer and starting in the fall. However, the wasps are not really flying at that time. The wasps are only flying earlier in the season. So we can see that there's already a mismatch between the life stages and the phenology, like the whole way of the timing of the wasp and the beetles. So this is the type of information that it's really, really useful when it comes to management, because we can work with when is it that we need to be releasing these wasps. So a lot of releases keep on happening during the whole year. And currently in the highlands, they're releasing them between June and August. And in the lowlands, they're releasing them between July and August. And as you can see on the graph, in the lowlands, we're not really matching where most of the larvae is present. So this is information that has already been communicated to Maryland Department of Ag, which is the one that takes care of doing these releases. And so hopefully this is the type of information that will aid with the management of this beetle. And so just concluding a little bit, as we saw, there's differences between urban and natural forest. Most of these pests that I provided information about are in natural forest, but they can also be present in urban sections. So it's always important to be keeping an eye, monitoring, catching the pest early, because that is the key to control it before it actually starts causing problems and mortality of the trees. So reporting efforts by citizens, so each and every one of us doing these types of efforts of letting the agencies that are actually making an effort to control them is very, very important. And the role of master gardeners and all of you here is part of this. So monitoring, making sure that you are letting people know when this is happening, and trying to do a little bit of control on your own gardens and your own spaces is very important. As everybody probably that comes in and talks about pests mentioned, the use of pesticides can be harmful to other non-targeted organisms. So make sure that you're always considering the organisms that live in the area and how it could impact all of these beneficial. So there are tools, they're great, and they are really useful. However, make sure that you're doing it very considerately and very cautiously. So with that, I wanted just to suggest a few of the resources where you can find more information. Evidently, the University of Maryland Extension website is a very good one, and there is one section that is specifically for forestry. So there's a lot of information there that you can find. The Maryland Department of Ag, the section of natural resources on the Forest Service, also have a bunch of information about all of these invasive pests and all of these different types of pests and insects that could be attacking trees. And then you can also go to USDA and look for information from the Forest Service. They literally have a section that it's dedicated to invasive species, and they go ahead and like dedicate articles complete to all of the information that can be found about these species. And so with that, I want to go ahead and open the table to people so that you can go ahead and ask questions. And if you want any more information, you can email me directly or you can contact your extension specialist in the area. And so, yeah, so that's what I have for you today.
Thank you so much, Angela. That was wonderful. I do have a number of questions from the group. And so for the first one, there was an observation that a number of us break open the nest of the eastern tent caterpillar, and then the birds fly in and eat them. But the question was, since they're native, what is the eastern tent caterpillar's ecological value for our ecosystem?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a good question because it also allows us to think about what is it that they're doing naturally in our environment. So they are a source of food for a lot of other organisms and other animals that live around. So birds are going to be very benefited by the presence of these caterpillars. There are bats that would be feeding on them. I'm sure that raccoons or other types of mammals will be able to feed on them. And also even mild control of the populations of trees and shrubs around the area. So you have to consider that pests are only considered pests because it is causing any harm to humans. Like in their natural environment, they're not really pests. They're just in their own natural balance, right? So because we have a space that we care for, let's say our gardens, and we do not want to have a defoliated tree for aesthetic reasons, maybe, that's when we try to control them. But it is a very good point, and it is a very good thing to bring up because, yeah, these are only pests because we consider them pests.
Okay. What characteristics make the traveler cultivar resistant to the woolly Adelaide?
So I am not particularly familiar with the type of improvement and genetic improvement that have been done with this traveler cultivar. I would assume that it is probably a tree that has different levels of chemicals that are inside the tree, like maybe higher levels of terpenes or higher levels of jasminates or other types of chemicals that could be just not as tasty for the pests. So I don't particularly have the information, but that's what I would assume that it's doing.
Okay. How, okay, here we go. How old does the ash tree have to be for the beetle to attack it? The ash saplings that people are finding seem to be healthy.
Well, this is a very important thing to have in consideration. And thank you very much for asking this question, because there's a lot of research, especially in Michigan, that is being done after 20 years of the first finding of it. It's like, okay, well, all the ash trees were killed by this. What is going on with the ones that are coming over? So the beetles, the adult, feed on the leaves of the ash trees. The saplings are safe up to a certain level and up to a certain point. However, as soon as they develop woody or like a stronger trunk where the larvae can feed on, that's the moment where they will be attacking it. The reason why there has been different types of introductions of wasps that could be attacking this pest is because each one of the wasps have different characteristics. So the wasp that was black, that was really tiny, the Tetrasticus, this is a species that is able to attack larvae on thinner bark. So usually on trees that are a lot smaller, that have not developed like all of these crusty forests, like crusty wood, will be better suited to be attacked by these wasps. And the other species, the Spacious galeni, and there has been another species called Spacious agrilite that have not been really established very well in the area, has a long ovipositor. So what these wasps do is that they will go ahead and find the bark they will start to walk around, and the tree might be like producing all of these stress signals. Like they will be like producing a lot of different types of vapors or like smells that the wasp will be able to find. They will come into the tree and they will be starting to tap with their antenna. So they will be like, okay, where is it that the movement from the larvae is happening? And so they have like this almost as an injection probe, that it's the ovipositor, where they will locate. Let's say that this is the larvae here, and here is the bark. They will be like, okay, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Ha! I found it. And so they will insert their ovipositor, this needle, inside the bark, and be able to attack the larvae. So the length of this ovipositor is what allows for the control on larger trees, while the other species is more suited for smaller trees.
Okay. There was a hope that if all of the ash in the region die off, will the emerald ash borer disappear? So is that probably not going to work out, or?
Well, it is a little tricky, because we do know that all of the ash in North America is susceptible to it. There might be some range and some level of resistance on the trees, and maybe over the years some of those resistant, like more resistant trees will be able to survive. However, the fact that we have seen that the beetles can jump to other species, like the white fringe tree, is a reason to worry. And especially because they can jump into other species, and they might be attacking also other oleaceae, aka olive oil trees, and other types of species that are important for humans. Is a little bit of a problem. So we cannot hope that just the fact that they completely extirpate and completely kill one of the species or a genus of trees, they're going to be completely gone. That's why there's been so much effort and so many different ways to try to control it. So yeah, that's probably not going to be the best way of it.
Okay. Has the introduction of the non-native wasps for the emerald ash borer had any detrimental collateral damage on the native beetles?
So the process of bringing a natural enemy that comes from another place. So this is like a controlled invasive, right? Because we're bringing something that it's not from here, and it might be causing other types of problems. So a lot of research is put into this. So a researcher will go in these areas, or they will go ahead and contact researchers from China or from Russia or from Japan, and they will go ahead and find what are the insects that are attacking this pest, or this beetle in this case, in their natural areas. It's probably not a pest. It's probably not a big deal in their native ranges, because everybody has been able to co-evolve and develop all of these different mechanisms to survive to each other. So the trees are far more tolerant, and and all of these are like there's a lot of other insects that could be attacking it. So once they identify a number of possible natural enemies that are working in their native range, they will go ahead and import them into the US. They will go into a quarantine process to make sure that we're not introducing anything outside of it, like making sure that there's no other, I don't know, like other enemies or other wasps, other diseases. Once this has happened, it goes into the trials of, okay, well, these are suited insects that could be working as natural enemies, or even sometimes fungus. Like there might be other types of things that could be attacking. And then you have to separate them into, okay, is this a predator? If it is a predator, it is very likely that could be attacking different things, but you want it to be as specific as possible. So that's where the parasitoids, which are the ones that develop inside of the larvae of the caterpillar, or the larvae of the beetle, comes in very handy, because parasitoids are very specific. Some of them might be a little more open and they might be attacking other stuff, but you want to go to the ones that are super specific. So once you identified some of the parasitoids that are best suited, you will go ahead and expose them to different types of larvae. It's like, okay, let's figure out what other larvae from the same family of this caterpillar, of this beetle, and from other families, these wasps could be attacking. And so it goes into different host trials to make sure that they are only attacking the beetle. So they will be providing, okay, let's try out with this beetle, let's try out with this other beetle. Which one do they choose? And so they go one by one, making sure that they get to choose whatever wasp is mostly specific. There will still be some level of maybe collateral damage, that some of these might be attacking other larvae of the same family of beetles. However, considering how badly this pest is and considering the damage, the amazing damage that it's doing to the forest, this is a little bit of like, you kind of have to balance out what are the benefits and what are the costs. So that's why they have decided to continue with these three main parasitoids for it.
Thank you. And then can you please say any more about the need to buy local firewood? Can you explain why this would help? If the ash borer is present throughout the state and one burns wood that was purchased from another county, how would buying wood from another county make the problem worse?
Absolutely, absolutely. So actually, I think it was in 2021 when I started my graduate degree. For specifically EAB, they removed the caution of like everything that is from this county needs to be burned in this county, specifically for EAB. The reason why you don't want to do this, and if we're talking about EAB, is because if the wood is infested with it and you move it to another place, you might be bringing this pest to another place. EAB is already all around, and it is already all around the East Coast. So that's why USDA was like, this is not really a measure that it's making such a big difference for the EAB. However, as we saw, there's multiple other invasive pests that could be moving from one place to another. So you might be carrying around eggs from the spongy moth, or you might be carrying around eggs of the spotted lanternfly. So this is the type of things that maybe for this specific pest, because it's all around the place, it's not affecting, but it is a very good practice to not move wood from one place to another, just because you do not want to be bringing things that might not be present on the area.
Okay. We're not sure. We wanted to make sure you were aware of the Montgomery County champion ash tree in Sandy Spring. And that it is being injected, we believe, in hopes of keeping it alive and aware. We're also wondering, is there a message alert or a listserv or any kind of resource where you can sign up if you have discovered any of these threats?
Not that I know of. If anything, it would be with the Maryland Department of Ag, but I do not think that they have a citizen-based type of listserv or this type of things. Like if there is any new counties or any new information, they always post it, and they're very active on sharing all of the information that they have on their website. So either you go to the USDA forestry website, or if you go to the Maryland Department of Ag, that's where you will be able to find it. From my understanding, and I might be wrong, but from my understanding, there is not like a listserv alert of this. And yes, I am aware of this gorgeous tree that it is located there. We actually have our county champion encompass, and it's humongous. It's beautiful. And all of these trees, yes, they're being injected. If you go close to some of these trees, and you will see them like on state forests or in historical places where you have like big trees that we want to preserve, you might be able to see like this little like rubber band like things where they just like injected year after year. So they just keep them there. Like they're just permanently in those trees, so that every year or every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on the size of the tree, the folks from Maryland Department of Ag from the different ranges or the different areas of Maryland will come in and we'll do the injections to try to save at least those ones. The problem with this type of insecticide is that since it is a systemic insecticide, so that means that it travels throughout the whole tree. It goes through the flow of it. It can also be affecting other types of insects. So probably the bees that are trying to feed on, I don't know, like the flowers, or if there's other insects that might be feeding on their leaves, well, they will be affected by the insecticide. But that's the reason why you kind of have to work with the balance of like, well, we want to protect this big tree. It's a historical tree. It has a couple hundred years old, and we want to make sure that it's still alive. So we need to use the insecticide, but it's also a source of seeds. So one of the other reasons why it's very important to keep some of these trees alive, even if it's by using insecticide that could be affecting other insects, is that it is a source of genetic material and genetic diversity, because we will have different types of trees all around the country, even like all around the eastern coast, that will be useful for this. And then since it is a systemic insecticide, it's inside of the tree. So unless the insects or the organisms that are feeding on it are feeding directly on the tree or the tree leaves, it's not really affecting other organisms in the area, which is what happens when you just use like a foliar pesticide, or you just like a spraying of it.
And I think this is one of our final questions. Anything to say about bagworms?
Bagworms. I have not really worked with bagworms a lot, so I don't have a lot of information from it. But I can share some of the information with one of the people from Montgomery County so that you can share it afterwards, or find them on one of those websites that we have up in there.
Okay. And a quick check, I think, are you going to be letting us use your slides as part of a repository of speaker slides?
Yeah, that,
Okay.
and I know that you are recording the
Right.
session, so other people will be able to have access to it.
Yes. Yes. Okay, whoop, one more just came in. The tree of heaven is the preferred host to the spotted lanternfly, but of course it's an invasive tree, and cutting it down just creates more small tree of heavens. Can you just look for tree of heaven for the egg masses for the spotted lanternfly? Can you look for those on it?
Yes, you can totally look for the tree of heaven as this person is commenting. This is a preferred host. So that's probably the place where they will be like highly feeding on and reproducing, and like this just means that this is a tree that has like all of the nutrients so that these plant hopper can develop the fastest and the best way. The removal of the tree, it just means that we are not having a superfood available for this plant hopper. And yes, maybe we will be having sprouts of other of these ones. So like the full removal of the tree might not be available. And maybe over the years it will regrow. However, it is very important that, as this person is mentioning, the tree of heaven is an introduced species. So instead of planting more tree of heaven, we should be planting more of our native forest trees, or trees in general, so that we can prevent the reproduction of some of these pests.
Okay, thank you again very much. Excellent presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Steve.
All right. I think you guys can hear me. Yep. Thanks. Thanks, Tina. So I'm just going to wrap things up here, guys. Just a few things. First, I want to thank our speaker, Angela, here today for her presentation. Thank you. And Angela, if you have any handouts that you'd like to share with the group, whether it's the PowerPoint or any other peripheral things, just email me the copies or the links, and we'll get them posted on our website. And thank you for that. Also want to thank our tech team, of course, Sue and Tina. We also want to thank Allison for her presentation here, and also the other members who helped out with today's meeting. I'm just going to do a little mention for Montgomery College. We got a couple weeks. We've got a beekeeping class starting up there. And if you're interested in thinking about having honeybees or interested in that, please let me know. We've got a couple folks who have taken it, master gardeners who have taken it. It is all hands-on. It's all face-to-face. We got essentially a master beekeeper there up at Montgomery College. You will be extracting honey, and you will be installing, repopulating our beehives. So Hank can tell you about that. We were up there. We had a fun time kind of checking them out this past weekend. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you all for coming. I hope you stay, safe and warm here today, and hopefully the ice is melting away. And I'll see hopefully the rest of you guys soon, sometime in face to face. I hope. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank
It
you.
was really nice to be able to talk about all of these cool things.
Thank you, Angela.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.